I strongly believe that the concept of habit is one of the key tools we can use to support our children. I know that my daughter is and will continue to build lifelong habits, and these will enable her to live a much more independent life. G'day, I'm Debra Caldow, and welcome to the Red Giraffe Solutions Expanding Worlds podcast, where we aim to support you as you help your young person with additional needs plan for their future. A future where they are safe, secure, and live a rewarding and fulfilling life. From around the world, I share stories and share solutions from people making this possible right now. I'm a parent of a young person with additional needs, so I understand the challenges. Many of the people I've interviewed on this podcast have already helped me design a better future for my daughter, and I hope that they might help you as well to imagine what's possible for your young person. In this episode, I want to talk about the important role that habits can play in helping our young people become more independent, and how we've used them to support our daughter. Habit is made up of having a skill, whether that's related to cooking, cleaning, travel, managing money, or doing a paid job. And then it's the ability to do that something over and over and over again in a consistent manner. When I think about my daughter's future, I want her to be able to do things consistently, because that will enable her to be more independent and give her confidence in her own abilities. So habits can be a pretty powerful tool. Habit is all about routine, which a lot of our young people, and certainly my daughter, like. I believe that she prefers to feel a sense of control over her environment. Consistency and certainty, I know from experience, make her feel less anxious. So I want to share how we've used habits as the basis for supporting her to build skills across daily living, like cooking for herself, around relationships with using scripts for greetings, around purpose and doing the different parts of her current job role, and also around managing money, especially when it comes to delayed gratification. We all have habits that we rely on, and yes, some of those might not always be as positive as they should be, but they are something that guides a lot of what we do every single day. I should start by acknowledging where these ideas come from. As a teacher in a past life of business and marketing, habit theory is something that I was familiar with. And as my daughter got older, and we started to look for ways to support her to build her future life, I revisited some of the theories around habit, because I thought it might offer ideas to help move our daughter towards doing much more for herself. There are plenty of good books out there on habit, but there are three that I found particularly useful. I should also add here that I'm now more of a listener than a reader, and occasionally revisit these books when I'm on a long drive. The first book is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, where he talks about the habit loop, which has three elements: cue, routine, and reward. The second book is Atomic Habits by James Clear, in which he made popular the idea of habit stacking. And finally, my personal favourite, Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg, in which he also talks about habit stacking, or tiny habits as he refers to them, as well as the role motivation and ability play in developing habits. So these books have helped us to design ways that we can support our daughter to build the habits that now help her manage her life in so many ways. Of course, there are other books out there, I'm sure, always equally valuable, but these just happen to be the three that I've listened to. Because what I've found is that although the idea of developing habits sounds pretty easy, it's a good idea to refer back to the theories around habit every now and then. So let's start by talking about Duhigg's idea of the habit loop, because that's something I found easy to understand when I thought about some of the things that my daughter did, especially when she was younger. The habit loop has three parts: cue, routine, and reward. The cue can be internal, like a feeling of overwhelm, or external, like the sound of an alarm going off at a specific time. This cue leads to a routine, that might be turning off the alarm or acting in a certain way, and the reward can be tangible or intangible. When my daughter was younger, she struggled in crowds, so a crowded street became a cue for her to start the routine of feeling anxious, and the reward, well, we would try to remove her as quickly as we could or shield her in some way. The habit loop and how it helps us manage our environments was made very clear to us when she first started school. She was finding school very, very challenging. The scenario would play out like this. She would feel overwhelmed, her cue. Then this would mean she started to get disruptive in class, her routine. And then she would be removed from class, her reward. So of course it was a perfect habit for her. She got exactly what she wanted from it. And it became a habit because she saw no other way to deal with her feelings. Of course there is an issue around maturity here as well. I doubt we could have sat down and explained to her that she needed to change her routine. So I'm not suggesting that understanding the why is necessarily going to help find a quick solution. In this situation, perhaps if the teacher had been a little bit more aware, they may have seen this for what it was. But now she's older, we use the habit loop in a very different way. Her morning routine is very much based around this idea. Don't get me wrong, this has taken time, because of course the basis of habit is the idea that something is repeated over and over and over and over. You get what I mean? And it will also be impacted by motivation and ability, which I'll discuss a little bit later. But on the 3 mornings that she goes to work, her alarm goes off. That is the cue to come downstairs, have breakfast, then go back upstairs, have a shower, get ready for work, leave the house at a set time to catch the bus, etc. And the reward, well, that is almost intangible in some ways. She feels good about being there on time. She feels part of a team. She has all those rewards that come with having a job, including the money. So the idea of this habit loop, a cue, a routine, a reward, is a really strong one when you think about trying to create new habits. In terms of other things that she does around the house, there are also cues around cooking. So for example, there's a certain time that we have dinner during the week. The cue is that specific time, and the routine is she starts to cook dinner. The routine is created around the recipes that we've made it easy for her to cook. So cooking a recipe has become a habit. And if anything, recipes are good examples of how effective habits can be in our everyday lives. I don't know about you, but I have certain recipes that I just know, and I pretty much prepare them the same way every single time. Because habits are something that you do over and over again, often without thinking too much about exactly what you're doing. My daughter has a small number of recipes that are at the habit stage, and some others she's still working on. And the aim is that she will have enough of those so she can make herself tasty food every day when she's no longer living at home. So I think there's a lot to be said for the whole idea of the cue, routine, reward, habit loop. And clearly when you think about trying to break negative habits, that's when it can, I think, become very, very useful. It's often difficult to change the cue, especially if that's an emotion. But the routine can be changed. My daughter still finds crowds a challenge. That cue hasn't changed, but her routine has. So whenever she gets anxious, she now puts 2 fingers under her watch band, and that has now become her routine. And her reward? Well, it's the same. She feels calmer. I think it's important to acknowledge here, though, that there's a certain level of emotional understanding on her part. Trying to create a new routine is probably something that will be much harder to do with a younger child. So I suspect that people might be listening going, well, that wouldn't work with my child. You're probably right, but it could be a maturity issue, especially if the cue and routine are emotionally based. But there are other ideas to consider, not just the habit loop. Another way could be by looking at the idea of habit stacking. James Clear made this idea popular in his book, and it really is what it says, adding new habits to existing habits. This is probably something you've already done, even if you didn't call it habit stacking. We used this idea when it came to getting our daughter to do more around the house. When it came to clearing up after dinner, we started with getting her to take her plate to the sink. And once that habit was embedded, then it was putting her plate in the dishwasher, then taking other people's plates to the sink, and then putting those plates in the dishwasher. Over time, parts were added to the task to include turning on the dishwasher and unloading the dishwasher. You get where I'm going with this. She now does all of those things, and it's a habit. Basically, it's the same idea that BJ Fogg also talks about when he talks about tiny habits, building on existing habits, and adding something so small, it seems very easy to do. But BJ Fogg also talks about something that I think is very relevant, and something you may have already thought of. What if they're not motivated to do something, or they don't yet have the skills to do it? BJ Fogg argues that habits are easier to develop if you're highly motivated or you have a high level of ability to do something. When it comes to motivation, this was the case for our daughter to start doing her own laundry. We had quite a few heated discussions in our house around laundry, most often when my daughter wanted a favourite t-shirt which just happened to be lying dirty somewhere in her room. We got tired of this, so gave her her own laundry basket, and anything that got in there got washed. She was then motivated to make sure the clothes she wanted got in there. Then, using the tiny habit approach, we asked her to bring the basket downstairs to the washing machine, and over time built that up until now she's responsible for her own laundry. She continues to be motivated to do her laundry because, well, she wouldn't have any clothes otherwise. We've also added a cue to this in that she does her laundry every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. But the key here was we tapped into her motivation, and initially we kept the habit very small and only one part of the time was embedded. We didn't add anything until that part was done. But I'll admit, her motivation for other similar tasks isn't always as high, which is where ability becomes key. We also think about the words we use. My daughter cleans her bathroom and her room each week on a set day, the cue, but we don't refer to these as chores, but as household management. This also taps into the story of how one day she will have her own house. If you like, that is the reward that she feels once she's completed the routine. But when it comes to ability, we also look at ways to make everything as easy as possible. The kit she has to clean her bathroom, for example, has everything she needs in it, and we always use as much cleaning technology as we can to make things quicker and easier. Our robot vacuum might just be one of the best inventions ever. So while I know there are habits that my daughter will be motivated to develop, I think a lot of the habits that she will need to live her life the way she wants to are going to come from the ability end of things. And I think here it's also important to acknowledge that our children have often been told from a very early age that they don't have certain abilities, that they won't be able to do certain things. So one of the things that we have to do is build up their self-belief in their own ability, which is why ideas like habit stacking or tiny habits have so much value and are great tools we can all use to support them to do so much more for themselves. So I've talked about the 3 ideas: the habit loop, cue, routine, reward, habit stacking or tiny habits, and the role of motivation and ability. Those have been the concepts that we've used to support our daughter to develop habits. Habits she uses at home, at work, as well as in her friendship. The habit to ask how someone is and what they've been doing. Yes, it's a social norm, but it's also a habit. And we've also used habit when it comes to money management. She tracks her spending, but probably more important is her habit of waiting 24 hours before she buys something that she really wants. This habit is not as strong as I'd like it to be just yet, but it is used enough, and practice makes perfect, as they say. And it's worth mentioning that the link between learning skills and habit is so intertwined, because a habit is just something that we're able to do repeatedly without really thinking about it. And that's what I want my daughters to be able to do. When we teach our children a new skill, we want them to remember that skill and to be able to do it each time they need it. So using the theories around habit is a great way to underpin the learning of any new skill. So I want to finish up with some thoughts on why the ideas around habit don't get used as much as they should. So hands up, the number one reason is me, and maybe it's you as well. At the end of the day, it's often quicker, easier, and much less of a fight to do things yourself. So things like cleaning, doing the laundry, those sorts of things, often it's just easier to do it myself. There's also that thing where I don't want my daughter to not have clean clothes. I don't want her leaving the house looking like no one cares. The problem is, every time I do something for her, I'm taking away that opportunity to learn and to create that habit to do it for herself. Like everyone, why wouldn't she let me do everything for her? I did the same with my parents. But she's not me, and I know that for her she needs to learn skills explicitly, because she's not the kind of person who will see someone else do it and just pick up what to do. So at some point I have to be stronger, and it's taken all my strength not to pick up some clothes, clean up that mess, I can tell you. But it's all about practice, and the only way she'll get practice is if I don't do it for her. And belief, I think, is a barrier as well. As I said, our children have been told what they can't do for so long, and there are times too when we listen to that message, and that impacts on how we also see their future ability. That's why when we think about how we support our daughter, a key part of that is using our vocal method, which stands for vision, options, create, assess, and legacy. In terms of ability and habit, the key one here has been options. When it came to building her skills and creating habits around cooking, we knew that the options everyone else was using wouldn't work for her. She's always struggled with certain cooking techniques involving heavy pans and hot water. So what we did was find the options that fitted her ability, not try to build her ability to match existing ways of doing things. If you've seen any of the cooking videos on our Red Giraffe Solutions YouTube channel, you'll see that the way she cooks is guided by what she can do, not what she can't do. So with ability, it's about thinking what options are available to make developing the habit much easier. But I think we also need to realise that because of the self-doubts our children have about their own abilities, the idea of motivation and ability are often closely linked. This means that the more their abilities increase, the more their motivation will increase. At least that's been our experience. As my daughter has learned to do more for herself, she's become more motivated to do more for herself. She has that sense of pride in being able to do something for herself, and also for others. The greater her ability, the greater her motivation is, at least on those things she sees as being part of her quest for independence. I strongly believe that the concept of habit is one of the key tools we can use to support our children in building a strong foundation for a safe, secure and rewarding life. I know that my daughter is and will continue to build lifelong habits, and these will enable her to live a much more independent life, as well as help her navigate every day of her life. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that the stories and the solutions shared on here help you as you support your young person to create their future. And if you know anyone who would find the ideas useful, please share the podcast with them. Of course, if you want to, you can leave a review, because that is another way families who need this information can find it more easily. This show is created as part of Red Giraffe Solutions. To find out what the Red Giraffe is all about, visit redgiraffesolutions.com, where you'll find more resources around daily living, relationships, purpose and financial security. I'm at Debra Caldow on Instagram and Facebook. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a conversation with you on any of those. Bye for now.